to me, it really is quite simple. Just like make it easier to use blockchain systems at large. That I think is like the North Star goal.
Hey, and welcome to episode 1 of the Talking Intentionally podcast by Axal. Axal is building a network of verifiable agents to solve any Web3 task. Today we're speaking with Austin King, the CEO of Omni, about chain abstraction. If you've been on Twitter, you've probably seen Austin's hot takes on chain abstraction, solvers, and making Web3 usable. Be sure to stay till the end of the podcast to see a special announcement about Axal's AUTOPILOT, our first product that is launching later this year. So without further ado, enjoy episode 1, and please let me know what you think in the comment section. So, hey, dude, thank you for coming on the podcast, Austin. Really grateful for you to make the time. How about we start with big question: what is chain abstraction?
Yeah, glad to be here. What is chain abstraction? I think a lot of people think it's a bunch of different things right now. To me, it's mostly about simplifying the reality of interacting with chains at large. If you take it literally, chain abstraction is like let people work at a higher level of abstraction when they're talking to chains. So people are like taking a number of different angles on this, but to me, it really is quite simple. Just like make it easier to use blockchain systems at large. That I think is like the North Star goal that we're all aligned around, even if we are working on different dimensions of the stack here.
Cool. And where do you see things like intents and solvers fitting in with chain abstraction?
Yeah. I don't think chain abstraction has a future without solvers and intents. I really see these as like fundamental technologies necessary in order to achieve this. There are a couple others. I think about account abstraction and interoperability a lot in this domain. But I do think intents and solvers, these aren't really a technology. It's more of a design paradigm. But I don't think that we'll be able to hit this end goal of chain abstraction without leaning into this design paradigm of offloading complexity to more sophisticated market participants like solvers.
Yeah, do you mind just like going a little bit more into detail about that? Like, why exactly are they the right fit for this like problem?
Yeah, I think for a long time we have tried to. Okay, so there's some static amount of complexity when you're using a blockchain, right? Um, Previously, there had been two parties that you can like kind of shift how much complexity you're putting on one of these parties compared to the other. So the way most of it works right now is that a majority of the complexity gets put on users. Uh, they're the ones who have to switch RPC endpoints. They have to have gas on multiple rollups. They need to like think about these different networks. They have to think about bridging. And then the other party that people have, historically considered are developers. These are the people who are building applications and putting them on these different chain platforms. So I think for a while, the space was thinking, hey, okay, if there's some certain amount of complexity here, and it's really burdensome for users, and if we're trying to make it easy for users, what if we made developers think about this stuff? Like instead of having users think about bridging and switching their RPC and thinking about gas on roll up A versus roll up B, what if we made developers think about that? This, I think, the industry has leaned into over the past couple of years and honestly failed. I don't think, for anybody listening, if I ask the question, like, what is the number one cross-chain dApp? Most people probably like not a single protocol is going to come to mind. And that's because there's not many of them. So it's like, why is that? If we have a solution to this whole like fragmentation problem that the entire Ethereum ecosystem is really kind of having an existential crisis about, why have we not seen this deployed more widely? And really, I think it's because it's the wrong design. And the way that you solve this is you introduce solvers. So going back to this like certain amount of complexity paradigm, before we had like, if this is the amount of complexity that it takes to use a blockchain system today, before it was like, this is how much we put on developers and we're putting a majority of it on users. They have to think about bridging and stuff. Cross-chain dApps kind of inverts that, where it's like, okay, well, let's make it simple for users, but let's put a lot of that complexity on developers. The way that I think this will go is let's make it really simple for developers here. They just build their application on one rollup. Let's make it really simple for users over here. They just like declare their intent, they sign something. And then all the complexity in the middle of like bridging, gas on these different platforms. Let's make solvers take care of that. And these are people who are like specifically like sophisticated market participants like Wintermute. Um, I'm pretty convinced at this point that this is the way everything is going to go. So it's not that solvers are a specifically new technology. It's more a different way of looking at the problem that the industry has been trying to solve over like 3 years now. And we talked to hundreds of teams about building cross-chain dApps. We got like over 40 of them to deploy on our test nets. But just looking at the friction there, like we're able to make an application appear available across multiple rollups just with a front end SDK integration. Whereas with a cross-chain app, you have to write new smart contracts, you have to design this system, you got to get audits. This takes like 4 months and almost 100 grand. So yeah, I'm pretty convinced that there is no future where people actually use these systems at scale without solvers.
And I think you're starting to touch on it, but I'd love to hear about like what is Omni doing to like help fight chain abstraction and like make this problem go away.
Yeah. So I think ironically, most people are underestimating long term the opportunity here. And short term, they're overestimating kind of like what they can introduce. We're a pretty scrappy and pragmatic team. So long term, what this is going to be is it's just going to be baked into the internet like any of the other databases we use, whether that's like Postgres, MongoDB, like it'll just be a backend technology that developers are using and users don't really need to think about. They can think about it and go inspect these networks, but they won't be forced to do that. That's long term though. Where we're at today is we got to solve this like bridging problem. We have to make it that the existing applications can just appear natively available across all these different rollups. And we have to do that in a way that's easy for developers and for users. So what we introduced is this way where you can integrate this SDK into the front end of an application. You don't need to upgrade your smart contracts. You don't need to like, you know, deploy your smart contracts on multiple different rollups and get them audited and like have this really long delivery time and expensive process. You just integrate a front end SDK. And this works in a backwards compatible manner with all the existing wallets that are out there. And so from a simple perspective, what the first step that we're taking down this path looks like is developers integrate the front end SDK and it looks like their app is everywhere. Users don't need to change anything. They can just use that app, even if the app is on Arbitrum and they hold their funds on Optimism.
What are like some of the specific barriers you see towards like towards Omni getting more popular and like it becoming like the go-to solution for chain abstraction?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the main things constraining growth right now, honestly, just product readiness. This whole chain abstraction paradigm, I think people are generally aligned that it's quite exciting, but a lot of these technologies are quite nascent. And so we will be rolling out iterative versions of this protocol that we're building here, and it will be able to serve a wider and wider audience of applications. But honestly, I think it's really just like engineering timelines for both us and a majority of companies in the chain abstraction space.
Cool. Well, final question. What does the world look like where chain abstraction is gone, intense win, and when do you see that happening?
Okay, when intents win, I like this framing. I think to answer what it looks like when intents win is from the user perspective, the user clicks button. I think that's all they're going to have to do. They're not going to think about gas. Developers are going to sponsor the gas that is necessary to pay for their transactions. All they're going to do is they're going to have a private key locally, whether that's like a MetaMask or, like authorizing with Face ID. They're just going to like authorize activity, and that's going to be it. That is really what we need to achieve for normal, reasonable people to use these systems. That's the standard UX that we have in the internet today. Like you sign in with Google and you like authorize something. It's going to be that level of simplistic for end users. But think about it more widely, what the world like looks like. I'm super excited about this because it will look like using blockchain technologies is just like a backend tool for developers. And users are not going to be forced to think about this, but the experience of using the internet will be just upgraded because now we're going to have shared databases and you're going to use one website, but you're also going to like hop over to a new website and be able to connect your wallet, you're not going to think about it as a wallet, but you'll just connect your wallet and all of your like data and funds will just be there natively. And so I think a lot of people struggle to imagine what this would look like, but we really do have a very, we're serfs today to our feudal lords that are like Facebook and Google. And we're kind of putting these little boxes on the internet. And we become so accustomed to it that we don't really think about it. But the internet will simply feel more smooth because we'll just be able to bring our data and funds everywhere to all these different websites because they won't control it. Like we will all, at the end of the day, have control over that data and money.
Perfect. And what does Omni look like in 4 or 5 years from now, if you're comfortable giving a prediction?
Yeah, 4 or 5 years. I mean, I'll be candid about our strategy here. What we are introducing right now in the chain abstraction stack is this like, okay, cool. It's an SDK that developers can integrate to access all the users and liquidity across the Ethereum ecosystem. Cool. Honestly, it solves one of the biggest problems it solves the biggest problem in the Ethereum ecosystem right now. But like, talk to anybody outside of crypto, they're not going to care about that. So just simply put, our strategy here is build like extremely pragmatic products that solve real problems that are out there today and acquire territory, and then layer more and more protocols on top of that to make it even easier to use these systems. So on a 5 year timeline, our goal really is use Omni to crawl up the abstraction stack until it gets to a point where using blockchains just looks like using the normal internet.
Perfect. Well, hey, Austin, thanks for taking the time to be guest number one on our podcast. And yeah, I hope you're well.
Of course. Thanks for having me, man.
Guys, I'm speaking with Ari from Axal about the launch of AUTOPILOT. So first of all, what is AUTOPILOT?
Autopilot is a tool that automates any Web3 trading or investing strategy. So you simply set your parameters, you fund your wallet, and you'll have a personalized bot that does all the work for you. In my eyes, it's like the ultimate companion to any trader or investor in Web3.